Alright, so we're back with another installation of HackTheBox walkthroughs. Today we'll be doing Haystack, and we'll be finding the needle in the haystack. Alright, so as always, we did an nmap scan, and we have 3 ports open, so SSH, 80, HTTP, and 9200, which you may recognize as Elasticsearch. So I kicked off a derb buster, or derb, on port 80. And so it was fairly disappointing. We only got the index page using the common word list. And so if we needed to enumerate more later on, I could go back and try the big word list, but it won't be necessary in this case. I also ran a derb on 9200 to see if I could find any leads there. So we do get a couple interesting paths here. So one is bank and one is quotes, and those will turn out to be useful in a bit. So I pulled open the main page in my browser and I get this image. So let me actually curl this so I can get it easier. Alright, so if I curl haystack, yep. Oops. So this image, we'll just take a look at it, see if there's anything hidden in it, because this is looking like that sort of challenge so far. So nothing interesting there. I like to bin walk things sometimes just to see what comes out of it. So nothing there stands out to me. Let's do a strings on it. Okay, so at the very bottom, that doesn't look like part of an image to me. That looks very much like base64. So go ahead and throw that into base64-d. I can't speak Spanish. I'm not even going to try. So if you throw this into your favorite translation software, it'll translate into the needle in the haystack is key, in quotes. So it sounds like a hint. Not entirely sure what to do with it yet. But since we've exhausted our possible paths on port 80, it's time to turn to port 9200 for what should be an Elasticsearch instance. And so one of the first things I did after seeing that it was Elasticsearch, I did see those those 2 paths in my derb buster, or my derb, but I wanted to confirm that I had found everything, so I actually spun up Metasploit, and it has a tool to enumerate indices. So we'll try that. Alright, so it just found Cabana, bank, and quotes. So it really just affirmed that what we saw before, those are indices for Elasticsearch. So we can possibly enumerate these for data. That should hopefully get us further. So I did some research on how to interact with Elasticsearch's API over web requests. So we can do a lot of stuff with curl, actually. So we'll try the bank index at first. And so we can use this search path here and add pretty equals true to get a better JSON printed view. And so I made a mistake at first when I did this, and I think a lot of other people might have too. But you can see here we get a few results. And so I was looking at these for a few minutes or maybe longer, and I was like, there's clearly nothing here that I can do anything with. I mean, maybe there's some usernames or other personal information we could try to guess passwords with, but at that point we're just guessing, and that could take all night. So I realized there's also a size parameter, and by default it's not going to show everything, so we have to do size. And I did actually, the first result, or the first part here, says how many results there are. So there are 1,000 total hits, so we can just set our size to 1,000, and that should cover most of the bases. Alright, so I saved this into a JSON file already. So I don't know if there's anything in here. Looks just like a lot of usernames, so we'll put that aside. The same thing goes for quotes. Also have to make sure to add 1,000 or a sufficient number. I think it was only a couple hundred that it had. So these are all in Spanish again. Let's take a look at that again. And so this part I didn't really care for being in this challenge because it was a bit, maybe a bit unrealistic. A little frustrating since my first instinct wasn't to read through every single one. That was my last resort, and once I resorted to that, I happened upon the actual solutions, which are hidden like a needle in the haystack. So what I think I did is I used the hint from earlier. So we have the hint from earlier. The needle in the haystack is key. And so if you search for the Spanish word for key, which is clave, or however you say that, this comes up. And so we got more base 64. Didn't actually copy that this time. Okay, great. So let's copy this over, base 64 to code it. Password, Spanish is key. Apparently in this case it is. If we search for clave again, sorry if I'm botching that word, we get more base 64. And again, this part's a little unrealistic, and perhaps it could be called CTF-like. I guess that's what that rating is for, which I have no problem with, but it's a little more frustrating when you have no idea what to go off and you're just guessing. So we got a user and a password. So we saw earlier that SSH is open. So let's just go ahead and try that right off the bat. It's being a little slow here. I guess we'll stand by and let it do its thing. Yep, okay. So password Spanish is key. All right, so we're logged in as security. And we've done it. We got the user.txt. Time to move on to root. So I'm going to start with my usual privasks checks. So that's not a good sign, but we'll just play along. Shouldn't do anything. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what's going on in this system. You gotta love how Java apps look with their massive command line arguments. Very readable. Okay, so this is running your typical Elastic stack, it would appear. So Elastic Stack, for those who don't know, used to be Elk Stack. Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana are the three that come together for Elastic Stack deployments. So you've got Elasticsearch is what we got in with, or at least what we used to find the password and the credentials. Kibana is typically, or it is a web interface to let you search through Elasticsearch, and Logstash is kind of the input to the whole chain that lets you. It's where you send all your logs or other data to, and it formats them into different queues for Elasticsearch to process. So okay, so we can see there's a few other things running, but it would seem that this box has to do a lot with the Elastic Stack, so that might be our way to go forward. So let's just see if there's a way to get in through Kibana through a vulnerability. So this one, okay, there's one that's 7.5, and that's the highest here. And it's a arbitrary file inclusion flaw in the console plugin. CVE 2018. 17246. You know what? I'll actually see if I have this one on the Kali machine already with the search exploit. So no, we don't have it there. So we found a blog post that hopefully will outline what we're doing here. Okay, so it's going to let us run arbitrary JavaScript as the Kibana user, which, you know, could be a dead end, but usually in a HackTheBox box, if we're given the chance to pivot users, it's usually worth our time. So it looks like some directory traversal going on. And I think this was a pain when I first did this. So hopefully I still have my solution sitting around for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a reverse shell that's written for Node.js. I think I already have one lying around. Yep, so it's going to call back to us on port 8080. And I believe we also have to put it on the remote system. I could SCP it, but we're just going to copy and paste this since we're lazy. So let's see if there's an actual exploit we can use for this. I might be missing that. So if we actually search for the exploit, we have a request here that can be used for LFI. And so I think honestly, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I do have my file I used for this, my payload. So let's copy that over as well so we can take a look at that. I'm not sure if I wrote it or if I got it from somebody else, or like if I found it online for this exploit. But, oops. All right, so there's this this URL here that we got from here. And really, the number of / slashes here is arbitrary, as long as you, not completely arbitrary, but as long as you get enough of them to get back to the root of the file system. You can have many more of them and it doesn't matter. But I did catch this little problem here, and I struggled for a long time because I didn't see this. But there's 3 dots right here, and that threw off everything when I tried to run it. I don't think they actually have that in their screenshot when they ran it for real. Yeah, they did it correctly, and they must have typed it up wrong here. So that was a pain to find that, but once you get past that, it's all right. So I have it connect to SSH with Paramiko, a SSH client library, using our credentials we have, and it's going to copy over an arbitrarily named payload for the reverse shell. I don't remember what I did that for, but so it's going to put our reverse shell up there, and then we'll make a URL or make a request to that URL through that remote system, since Kibana is only exposed to localhost. And I typically like to automate my HackTheBox, the major steps in my HackTheBox challenges or machines. And so this is one of them here. We'll try to just run this and see if it works as expected. I think it requires rev.js. We have that already. Oh, and what's it even doing? It's going to run my reverse shell. So I need to start up a listener on port 8080 before we run that. like to get ahead of myself here. Alright, so we'll run lfi.py and hopefully that works. I only imported Pwn tools because I like their print output. I mean, I could have done it myself, but it's just an easy way to add that. Alright, so that was pretty easy. We exploited the vulnerability, got a callback, and we are now Kibana. So let's see if this actually gets us anywhere. I'm going to spawn a proper shell real quick. I like my tab completion. Can't live without it. Alright, so again, we start over and we're going to do some enumeration. Nope, dead end. Get me out of here. So what I did when I was going through this is I researched how Elastic was set up in this case. Looked into all three components of it. So looked into Logstash, looked into Elasticsearch, and looked into Kibana. And so that's kind of where the next step was, since I figured it would all have to do with Elasticsearch and Elastic Stack in some way. I keep messing this up, sorry. So one of the important steps I did was looking for writable locations, and I don't recall if this is group or as the user, but we'll find out in a second anyway. So I'll look for directories that have group ownership of Kibana, and pipe the failures, the dev null. Okay, so we get a bit much out of that. But what's interesting is this one, and I'll explain why. We'll take a look at how it's set up, and then it should hopefully make sense what's actually going on with that. So I'll CD over there so we can have easy access to all those files. Yeah, so Logstash, you basically configure multiple ways for it to take in information, and also how to like filter or how to match it. And so yeah, so this is the one that we care about actually. So this is a filter. Actually, let me start with that's fantastic. Let me start with input because that one is more relevant. Why did I do that? Yeah. I'm just trying to poke at these config files just to see what's going on. It's good to get an understanding of your system before you try to break anything. Just try to understand what it actually is doing and how it works, which takes effort, but that's part of it, of course. So the interesting one is going to be input. And so this defines, as I was kind of mumbling about, was where things come from. So in this case, this is looking for files in the below mentioned path, which is opt Kibana logstash. And just some various parameters about how it reads it, when it reads it, etc. So this is important to keep note of this path because we will need that again. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. And so that's where this other file comes into play. So filter actually kind of tells it what to do when it is reading those files. And so if type is execute, type was defined. Oh, geez. So type is execute. So that's defined here. So that will match on anything from this input. Sorry, the filter will match on anything from this input specifically. And so what's interesting about this is executing commands. Greedy Dady commando. So just to get an understanding how this works, So logstash purposefully can execute commands when desired. And so we're going to be able to abuse this here. I'm sorry I keep switching between config files. There's definitely an easier way to do that. But so there could be times when you legitimately want to run a command. So let's say if you match on some, you know, unusual message that you expect, you could run a command and log it or report it or something else outside of your other configuration. So I should just go straight to the docs. So yeah. So we also can look at the output, and this actually is just matching on it, and the output is what actually is going to happen with it. That'll solve all my problems. Yeah. Input, output. Okay, so yeah, exactly. Here is where we match again, and the type is execute. We'll use the exec option, or plugin rather, as an output plugin to run an arbitrary command. So here's legitimate usage. Like, let's say you're matching against a log file that has brute force attempts or something. You could create a firewall rule to drop that IP address in the future. Here, they're letting us arbitrarily run whatever command is matched against, and we're going to put it in the background as well, as to not interrupt, or not to slow down the system at all, or slow down this process rather, with blocking commands. So the important file for us going forward, now that we understand that anything going into this filter, this input, is going to be executed, we just have to understand how to format the message. So the regex matches against this, followed by a space, one or more spaces, and then it's gonna greedy data is going to basically grab everything after that. So regardless of whether there's spaces or other characters, hopefully it should ingest all of that. So now we can start to formulate our payload. Oops. So it mentioned for the input that we're going to be working out of opt cabana. And I'm sorry, one more time I have to look at the input because that's how it's matching the files. All right, so we need to make a file that follows this convention, so that won't be too hard at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this on the fly. Hopefully I'm spelling all this right. Not speaking Spanish has a downside in this case. So I'm going to make a really simple payload. We're not even going to get a shell out of it. I just want to end this and grab the root.txt since that's our goal. So we'll cat root.txt and chuck it in somewhere. It doesn't really matter. Temp. I like to try to hide things from other participants so that in case I forget to delete it, I usually try to clean up after myself. But if I don't delete this file, I don't want someone else getting the root flag. So in this case, I'll just tear it on the machine afterward. But all right, so we'll put it in temp.root, and then we're actually going to write all of this to a file that follows that convention. So logstash doesn't matter. All right, so we'll do that, and it should ingest that file, or at least read it within, I believe, 10 seconds. It'll be looking for files there. Yeah, so let's just stay there, I guess. So we'll look in temp. I promise this will work. Might just take a bit longer than expected. Oops. It's possible I broke something also. That's certainly possible. That, or it's just taking a little longer than I expected. Okay. It's possible I didn't follow the format exactly as it's supposed to be, or something stupid like that. Okay, there it is. It just took a little longer than expected. And we have the gold. Here's the root flag. Alright, hope you enjoyed this video. If so, there'll be more coming. So like and subscribe, and keep hacking the box. See you later.